I'm William Cooper, and you're listening once again to the Hour of the Time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all enjoyed the tape of Stephen Jacobson that we did last night. And shame on you if you didn't have everybody that you know sitting in front of your radio or your television if you listened on satellite, because it is the very best education on money that you could ever get in your entire life. If you'd like to have a copy of that tape, because we will not sell you our tape of last night's broadcast. It's an effort. You see, we do help the people who are out in front fighting the battle. If you want to order it, you have to order it from Stephen Jacobson. And if you have Veritas issue number 5, if you have your copy of issue number 5 of Veritas, it's right in there. The name of the tape is called Wake Up America. And you can actually get, as a special in that ad in Veritas, 2 tapes from Stephen Jacobson. Wake Up America, the best education in the world about money, and his tape on mind control, which is also one of the best you'll ever hear. But I think our broadcast that we've done on mind control on the Hour of the Time has slightly got an edge on him, but still it's good. But nobody can beat his Wake Up America tape on money, the history of money, what has happened to it today. And if you listened carefully, you know that you've got to get your hands on some money. We're headed for a fall, folks. Every paper system that's ever existed has failed. Has failed. If you don't believe me, and I encourage you not to, go check for yourself. Look it up. History books are all over the place, but specifically a place that most of you have never been, your own library. Right there in your own hometown, wherever you live. And if you don't have the books you need, get them through the interlibrary loan system, and you can find out all about that from your librarian, the person in your town that you've never spoken to, most probably. I encourage you to get to know your librarian very, very well. And for those of you who do not have Veritas issue number 5, I will give you the address and the price of the tape on Monday night, so that you too can get a copy of Stephen Jacobson's tape entitled Wake Up America. As for tonight, ladies and gentlemen, pay close attention. As usual, if you're not up to speed and have not been listening to this broadcast for quite a long time, and in specific, if you have not listened to our series on the mysteries, then you may not understand anything about tonight's broadcast. You may not even know where I'm going, and you may say, oh, this is just a bunch of bull. For those of you who have studied, who are up to speed, who have been listening to this broadcast for a long time, who have been reading on your own, who have been investigating and researching as I have advised you to do, this will be an eye-opener. This will put another nail in the coffin of our enemies. In the Counselor of January the 4th, 1974, on page 243, we find this. Senator declared that people would have acted if truth known. Washington. Senator George Malone, Republican of Nevada, was a thorn in the side of United States leftists, and they despised him. According to research by Omni Publications, Malone once commented, quote, I actually believe this, that if the people of this nation suddenly fully understood what the Congress has done to them over the years, they would move on Washington. They would not wait for an election. It all adds up to a preconceived plan to destroy the economic and social independence of the United States, end quote. Malone, now deceased, was a native of Fredonia, Kansas, son of J.W. Malone and Deanna McPherson. He was one of a large number of 32nd-degree Freemasons who remained loyal to American traditions. This is taken, ladies and gentlemen, from the Rosicrucian Digest, the official international Rosicrucian magazine of the Worldwide Rosicrucian Order. Volume 19, number 5, June 1941. Published monthly by the Supreme Council of the Rosicrucian Order, Rosicrucian Park, San Jose, California. In front of their headquarters, ladies and gentlemen, is an obelisk and a reflecting pool. This is entitled The Thought of the Month, Make Your Own Prophecies, by the Imperator. The present is the most transient of the three actual and imagined states of our consciousness. This changing present is ever adding to the growing past, and the future is a shadow cast by it. The indistinctness of the future, to our minds, confers upon it a vastness and a realism it does not actually possess. Since the past can only be revered or despised, and the present is constantly waning, men are ever drawn to the future. It is something yet unrealized, and in a strange sort of way, men hope to perceive it from afar. Thus they seek to choose from it in advance what they want and discard what they do not like, as a housewife selecting fruit in a marketplace. The more unstable and shifting are the present times and circumstances, the more men scramble to find some landing place in the future. Men cannot perceive as an actuality what as yet has no substance, rather than admit, however, that the stuff of which the future is made is in each moment of the present. They think the vision they need is possessed by a chosen few. In their search, they turn to the vagaries of all kinds of methods of prognostication, over which seers and prophets preside, often in false majesty. That some of these prognosticators are amazing in the accuracy of their predictions is not so much evidence of a specially endowed faculty or system to pierce the veil of tomorrow as it is a tribute to their keen analysis of today. For analogy, the man who upon studying a barometer announces the coming of a storm tomorrow hasn't had a vision of the future. Rather, he has become aware of a cause existing in the present. Most men trample beneath their feet on earth those substantial signs of future events for which they stretch their necks to scan the heavens. The greatest prophet of all is the prevailing times. If you would know what the tomorrow should and will bring forth, reverse your point of observation, place self in the indeterminate future, and then look back upon the present. So let us assume this position, and looking upon the things about which we are familiar, let us do a kind of realistic predicting. For out of the present arises those needs which shape the future. As a guide for our observation, let us divide our lives into 4 general spheres of activity. For practical purposes, we shall say there are the spiritual, political, and social, educational, and economic. There are many who disclaim and who would protest an inclusion of their lives in any spiritual sphere. However, I believe our definition of the sphere will be all-inclusive enough for their views. The spiritual, as we use it here, consists of a discernment of a moral order or an inner influence upon our character. Men define these tendencies as either A, the flat of a personalized being, or B, a manifestation of the higher order of self, and C, the more complex configurations of their beings about which they resort to speculation. Upon these broad definitions of the spiritual impulses, we find established today, first, Orthodox religion. It contends that its interpretations are unaffected by human opinion or thought, and that they are, in fact, the absolute fiats of God. It further holds that all nonconformers are heretics and anti-credists. Some are often restrained from a devout massacre of their opponents only by the latter's superior number and strong organization under the banner of liberty. Concomitant with this orthodox religion is the ever-increasing number who proclaim that the moral sense is an amorphous God or divine mind dwelling within man. They further believe that an appreciation of it is quite relative to one's understanding, requiring the development of personal consciousness. This mystical conception, irreconcilable with Orthodox religion, often unfortunately produces a smugness among its adherents. That group who look upon spiritual ideals as growing out of obscure sensations of the body compose the disciples of the schools and substance of psychology and methods of physical philosophy. What then does the future hold for religion? We predict a mystical pantheism as the religion of tomorrow. The central doctrine of this religion will be that a universal intelligence as a series of concatenations of causes, creative and perfect in its whole, pervades everywhere and everything. Though it is absolutely impersonal, it provides in its perfection for a faculty in man, through which he can draw upon it to prevent and remove any discordance within himself or the spheres of his life's activities. The creed of this religion will expound that all things in essence will be united with man and of him and he of all else. It will not alone be a faith in the brotherhood of man, but a brotherhood of being. It will also proclaim that man can be no closer to this universal mind than what he can come to self. It will further teach that if he finds himself in the shadows, it will not be because he has been forsaken, is being punished, or must be redeemed, but that intentionally or inadvertently he has turned from the inner light. There will not be churches, but a church. There will not be sects, but degrees and grades of comprehension, initiation, if you will. From one to another will man advance as he proves himself competent. No men will have absolute comprehension of this universal mind, for they would have to be aware of all of those things which it comprises. Likewise, therefore, no man will have a wrong conception of it, for each state of consciousness will be related to the individual's personal attainment. As to the next sphere, the fundamental ailments of our present international political order are all too apparent. It is from a dispassionate survey of them we can realize the need and predict the eventual remedy. Basically, by nature and physiological structure, all humanity is united as a species. The variations of human conduct and the special adjustments to social conditions should not permit one body of men to band together or organize as a political group so as to exclude or to compel others to adopt their standards of living and form of government. Such conduct in the future will be considered striking at the basic natural unity of humanity. Thus, the multiplicity of social states, countries, or nations will cease to be. With their disappearance will go those conflicts and misunderstandings which are engendered by unnecessary rivalry for supremacy and domination. The world will be redivided, not into political districts or states, but into zones. Each zone will be determined by the physical aspects of certain areas, that is, its natural or geographical environment and prevailing social and intellectual level of the populace. The zone, for example, of what is now Sekondi, Gold Coast, South Africa, will have no lower or higher status in this new political order than the present Atlantic seaboard of the United States. The people of each zone will be vested with the right to elect a representative who by examination proves his thorough comprehension of the conditions of his zone and its people. These representatives will form a World Congress or Council. This Congress will in turn elect for prescribed terms the executive officers of the one united world state. And this World Congress will adopt a constitution which shall consist of such articles as will be for the preservation and furtherance of humanity's inalienable rights, which, of course, will not conflict with the inherent differences of the peoples of the various zones. There will be the further adoption of laws for each zone, particularly to their needs as foreseen and recommended by their respective representatives and consistent with the spirit and purpose of the World Constitution. The world population will be permitted to freely migrate from zone to zone as the temperaments, social inclinations, and intellectual interests and pursuits of the people move them. Politically, wherever they reside, they will be taken and accepted as equal citizens of the united world state. This will result in a continual shifting of the world population as we now know it, but with one important difference. Whereas now we have large congregations of the people in various sections of the respective nations, in the future world state, men and women will have the whole earth as their stage and home, if they so desire, without the present political and national restrictions of their movements. As for the social sphere, we predict that the future society will decree that since the earth is a habitat of humanity, it also is the common property of all men. No man or group of men will be permitted to lay claim to priority ownership of its rich and important areas or resources. Men will be allowed to occupy a limited extent of land for home sites, for cultivation, and for industrial or manufacturing production and cultural pursuits. No one will be able to occupy land to the point of exclusive control or monopoly of any natural resources, or so as to interfere with the rights of others to also enjoy and occupy land. Men will retain their possessory right and control of those things which they create from mind or produce or derive from their personal labor and efforts. The restriction being that they do not conflict with the wealth and natural resources which are and remain the heritage of all humanity. The system of jurisprudence will become completely reorganized, rather transcend the present obnoxious imperfections. Judges of the civil and criminal courts of zones will be selected by examination and unquestionable qualifications. Such qualifications will not merely include a knowledge of the science and philosophy of law, but as well as intellectual breadth, which comes from a freedom from any allegiances which might bias a decision. Juries will likewise be accepted by examination. The fallacy of the traditional belief of their peership will be abolished. Men must see clearly, eye for eye, before they are qualified to think or judge alike. The prospective juror's education, experience, and ability to comprehend the subject matter of the case will be determined in advance, assuring greater equity to all litigants. Further improvement in the system of jurisprudence will be the compulsory filing of a bond by a plaintiff when he institutes an action. This bond in a substantial amount will be forfeited if certain required factual matter has not been acquired in advance of the filing of the suit as evidence of the plaintiff's good faith. This will eliminate the legal extortion now in practice, whereby suits are filed containing charges not possible of proof under the sanction of the information and belief clause, and for the sole purpose of attempting to coerce the defendant to settle outside of court to prevent continued adverse publicity. Further elaboration along this line of improvement will result in compelling suits which have once been filed to be brought to trial, unless a judiciary body decides that a very good and sufficient reason for not doing so has been established. This will discourage actions which are now filed solely for intimidation, without merit, and without the intent to bring them to trial. The entire theory of what constitutes the freedom of the press and its agencies will be revised. The present perfidious freedom of the press will be restricted insofar as it amounts to an abuse is conceived as a mandate to exploit the reputations of peoples and institutions to advance its circulation for pecuniary interests. The so-called free speech of the press will be further curtailed, where under the guise of stating factual matters, unwarranted innuendos are added, expressing the bias of the press, and given as opinion are news comments. This information of the American press, in particular, will begin within the next decade. This reformation of the American press, in particular, will begin within the next decade. The world state will provide and maintain community hospitals, sanitariums, and clinics for the care of the sick and injured. These hospitals will be provided with capable staffs of physicians and technicians. Taxation will be adequate to meet the expense. Physicians of all approved schools of therapeutics will be paid by the state, and their entire professional services will be absorbed by the state. A graduated scale of salaries will be paid them in accordance with their experience and ability. Periodic tests of their efficiency will be made, compelling them to keep abreast of the latest findings of their particular system or school of therapeutics. Genius or outstanding ability in the healing professions, where one is capable of contributing particularly to the advancement of human welfare and the alleviation of suffering and the combating of diseases, will be compensated for by bonuses and appointments to special research staffs of the world state. Every citizen will enjoy these health benefits and guarantees, just as he does now elementary public school education in the United States, without direct cost or expense to him. In the sphere of education, we will not see the cessation of private universities or colleges. Public universities and colleges will, however, be increased throughout the world state, for which no fees for attendance will be required of the student. Strict entry examinations, a rigid curriculum, and study requirements will eliminate overcrowding in the fields of specialization. The World State Council, or Congress, will compel vocational analysis, which will be a highly developed and dependable science, instead of the maladroit system now in use. No individual will be permitted to study for a profession who is not intellectually or temperamentally suited to it. To prevent overcrowding and consequent corruption, for which certain of our professions today are noted, quotas will be placed upon all professions in each of the zones of the world state. Educational and vocational councils will continually develop and formulate new professions to compensate for the control and restriction of others. Personal failures in society will be reduced by the ingenious method of free analysis of the psychological disposition, inclinations, and aptitudes of the person, which will result in finding him when he cannot find himself. In other words, they're going to give you a test. They're going to tell you what you're going to do for the rest of your life, and that's what you're going to do, just like the Soviet Union has always done. When the cause of the individual's failure is found to be pathological, treatment will be conferred upon him at the expense of the state to convert him into an asset rather than a social liability. That means if you say no, you're going to a mental institution. Most of what I've imparted to you already tonight, ladies and gentlemen, you can see in action today. Don't you know that they're instituting into the school systems now a method of determining the vocational bent of a student at an early age so that they can direct the training of the student right as this describes?
Thank you for listening to the Urban Odyssey podcast. If you enjoy the content we release, please consider supporting us by subscribing to our Substack. A monthly membership is only $5 per month. If you decide to buy a year-long membership, it's only $50 for the entire year. Purchase a membership now at the official urban.substack.com. Again, that is the official urban.substack.com. You can also find all of my free resources that I share, such as free books, links, documentaries, and more, at bio.link/officialurban. Again, that's bio.link/officialurban. Now, let's get back to the audio.
Incredible, you say? Impossible? Look around you. This is an old plan. And this is right from the horse's mouth. It has already been put into action. It is happening as we speak. For science, we predict that the astronomical scale of distances will become completely revolutionized, revealing errors in our present theory as glaring as those in the long-since abandoned Ptolemaic cosmogony. The great telescopes, with their costly, stupendous lenses now used in astronomical observations, will come to appear as crude instruments, particularly because the entire principle on which they are constructed will be discarded. The magnification of objects by the use of lenses in astronomical telescopes in the great observatories will give way to a startling device employing, and get this folks, employing electromagnetic principles. This device will electrically polarize wave bands of light so that they have an electrical property and can thus be magnified as tremendously as we now amplify the electrical impulses produced by sound waves through present-day instruments. Vast stellar spaces will be reduced to the capacity of human perception. A universe now undreamed of in comparison to what we now can visually perceive will be disclosed to the knowledge of man. The hour of the time, ladies and gentlemen, is brought to you by Swiss America Trading. They are the purveyors of the real stuff that Stephen Jacobson was trying to tell you about last night. Real money. Real money. And by the way, the next issue of Veritas will have a revelation to make based upon the pressure put upon Washington, D.C. by issue number 5 of Veritas and the letters written by those who read Veritas. The United States Treasury has released some startling statistics, so make sure you don't miss the next issue number 7. Issue number 6, folks, from what I could tell, is all gone. Real money. You know, when I was a kid, we used to, every once in a while, come across a real silver dollar. And we didn't understand the importance of what we had then, but we knew that it was worth a lot more than anything that I have seen lately. And even in our young foolishness, we knew it. We could feel it. It was heavy. It rang when it dropped upon a table or rolled across the floor. It was silver. And I knew people who could drill a hole in the middle of a silver dime, put it on a small anvil and tap it with a little hammer and make the most beautiful jewelry you've ever seen. They were Indians. And they still do it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you learned anything last night, you learned this. That unless you have real money, you have nothing. Unless you have purchased items with real money, you have not purchased them and you are not the owner. And that by the creation of money that did not exist and loaning it for interest, the people who control the money have stolen the nation. And unless this is corrected soon, the only way the debt will be paid off is by perpetual method of indentured slavery, a system of never-ending debt in a classless society chained to a computer. Unless we wake up, that is what we leave our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, and with each successive generation, the control will be cemented that much more until liberty, if it is remembered at all, will be like a distant wisp of smoke across the moon. So call now and get your hands on some real money. Start using real money and real items, real commodities, real things as barter in trade. And if you can't find a merchant that will accept that, go to another merchant who will. People, ladies and gentlemen, are waking up. Not as much as they should, nor will they ever fully be awake. And most of them will never even approach the level of alertness and ability to think as the listeners of this broadcast have already perfected. Call now, Swiss America Trading, 1-800-289-2646, and shame on you if you go somewhere else. If you have utilized this broadcast to further your education and to help save you and protect you against what is coming, may God forgive you if you go somewhere else. You owe Swiss America Trading for the sacrifices that they've made in sponsoring the Hour of the Time. And I'm going to call you on it. I'm sick and tired of patriots and so-called people who love liberty not supporting their causes. 1-800-289-2646. That's 1-800-289-2646. Call now. You'll be glad that you did. A great weight will come off your shoulders. Look around at your loved ones. Can you honestly tell them, in light of what you heard last night, that you have taken the necessary steps to provide for their safety and their economic future in the coming collapse? If you cannot, then you must make this call, and if you do not, you do not love them. It's as simple as that. 1-800-289-2646 or 1-800-BUY-COIN. There will be instruments developed which will discover for man another natural, yet an almost dormant faculty, which will cause him to enjoy a perception of existence not now imagined possible for the human consciousness. This new faculty of perception will reveal intelligences existing elsewhere in the universe, which now we have no means of discerning. If this seems fantastic, conceive our present human race without the faculty of hearing, trying to become cognizant of a reality which would exist only as sound. Suddenly given hearing, would not their realization of the new realities be startling to them? Our present method of obtaining energy by the process of combustion, or the transmuting of a bulk material into another manifestation, will become obsolete. Man will not continue with the masses of oil and coal as fuel to produce energy, but will have harnessed the energy in its formative or atomic state. with which he is now experimenting, using the initial cosmic energy rather than that which escapes through combustion as we now know it. This, of course, will eliminate many of the present problems of which fuel is the principal cause. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in case you've just tuned in after the beginning of this broadcast, I am reading verbatim from the Rosicrucian Digest, the official international Rosicrucian magazine of the worldwide Rosicrucian Order, published monthly by the Supreme Council of the Rosicrucian Order, Rosicrucian Park, San Jose, California. This is contained in volume 19, issue number 5, June 1941. I continue. We predict that personal transportation will not need to increase vastly beyond what is now the maximum speed of air travel. A greater speed of personal transportation will come to be rivaled by a method which even in prediction appears weird. A place or destination will become possible of projection to man instead of man being transported to it. The combination of the physical aspects of a place or its environment will be so projected as to engender in man's consciousness the same sensations which arise from those perceptual qualities when he experiences what he actually looks upon or hears in his immediate surroundings. In other words, man will be put in rapport with a place in space without moving from his armchair. He will enjoy as complete emotional and psychic response to the projected impressions he receives as if his immediate surroundings had been transformed into them. Now, how do you suppose, ladies and gentlemen, these people understood virtual reality in June of 1941? I continue. Not just one or two of his objective senses will be engaged, but all may be simultaneously, or at least the number necessary for the complete realization of the place or thing. This will not be done in a physical or divine sense, but by the means of employing material instruments of science. What we now experience as radio, and added to it what the imagination can conceive as accurate color television pictures, can only provide us with a very crude idea of this future miracle we now predict. Ladies and gentlemen, did color television exist in 1941? In the economic sphere, we predict unemployment held at a constant, proportionately low level. This will be effected principally by the fact that men will be able to gravitate to work of their own ability and experience anywhere throughout the world state. Men will not be huddled behind nationalistic barriers or frontiers as now, if some plight befall a particular zone or region in which they live. We further predict that prices will be graduated to meet the purchasing capacity of the peoples of each zone of the world state. This means they're going to charge you whatever they know they can get, and if you live in a place that has more money, you're going to pay more money than some place that doesn't have that much money, and that already happens. A lot of the things that you pay out the nose for here in a third world country cost very little. How can that be? Isn't the manufacturing cost the same no matter where they sell the product? Have you ever thought of that? And let me ask you something else, ladies and gentlemen. Does it even matter to someone who can create money merely by penciling a bookkeeping entry? Have you ever thought of that? Who cares how many trillions of dollars the national debt is when it was created out of thin air? Get the message? This will be accomplished in the following manner. The people of a more affluent zone will proportionately pay more for the same commodities. See what I mean? The greater difference as profit will be used to make up the variation in increased production cost of the same articles in different sections of the world state. Consequently, the average production cost of a commodity, taking into consideration its cost wherever it is produced, will be the one that will be established, eliminating the possibility that a producer whose costs, because of matters beyond his control, would not, as now, be able to compete with his own product. Working conditions will be established by a council of the world state upon the recommendations of the representatives of the peoples of each zone. These recommendations to be founded upon the varying conditions of the topography and geographical factors and temperaments of the people of each zone. There will be no limit placed upon the personal acquisition of wealth. There will be, however, a supervision of its control and the manner of its application. Wealth, as we have heretofore predicted, will be prohibited from purchasing the control of sources of natural resources, large tracts of land, and from holding in any manner what the world state and its citizenry need. The power of wealth will consist only in its being put into circulation again through proper and permitted purchases. Begin today. Look around you at the world, and then with your impressions and experiences in mind, resort to introversion. Look inwardly upon the mirror of your own mind, and see if you do not find reflected there from your experiences the vision of tomorrow. Be your own prophet. Make your own prophecies. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that this was not a prophecy. This is the dissemination to the adepts of the plan in a manner that will not alarm the public. Think not? Think I'm whacked out? Think I'm absolutely crazy? Well, I know that the normal listeners of this broadcast don't, because this is the most intellectual, most truthful broadcast upon the face of this earth today. Bar none. And so I submit to you the proof. I will read to you from the September 1950 edition of a publication entitled The New Age. It is the official organ of the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Southern Jurisdiction, United States of America, published at 1735 16th Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. It's entitled God's Plan in America. And before I even begin to read this, I propose a question. Who's God? What is his name? What religion does he represent? And why should we follow him? Listen very carefully, ladies and gentlemen, for this is in their own words. I repeat, this is from the official organ of the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Southern Jurisdiction. I quote, God's plan is dedicated to the unification of all races, religions, and creeds. This plan, dedicated to the new order of things, is to make all things new. A new nation, a new race, a new civilization, and a new religion. A non-sectarian religion that has already been recognized and called the religion of, quote, the Great Light, end quote. Looking back into history, we can easily see that the guiding hand of Providence has chosen the Nordic people to bring in and unfold the new order of the world. Records clearly show that 95% of the colonists were Nordics, Anglo-Saxons. You see, folks, they verify what I've been telling you all along. All of this is racial. All of this is about the white race being the superior race, to pull the other races up from their lagging level of evolutionary development into the New Age, of course, by the guiding hand of the Nordic or the Anglo-Aryan races of the world, all of the races inferior. I continue now, as they verify everything that I've ever told you on this broadcast. Quote, looking back into history, we can easily see that the guiding hand of Providence has chosen the Nordic people to bring in and unfold the new order of the world. Records clearly show that 95% of the colonists were Nordics, Anglo-Saxons. Providence has chosen the Nordics because the Nordics have prepared themselves and have chosen God. They are not church worshippers, for they worship God's Word, the Holy Bible. The Nordics are the great Bible-reading people of the world today, and the Nordics, Anglo-Saxons, were the first people to print the Holy Bible in great quantity, and they were known as the people of a book, that book being the Holy Bible. But in order to read the Bible, it is necessary to know how to read. In the Nordic race, there is no illiteracy. In Norway, there has been no illiteracy for more than 100 years. Another fact that shows clearly that the Nordics are God's chosen people this time is they are always looking for more light on the mission of life. Looking at their station of life, these great Bible-reading people should open the eyes of the world. King Gustav of Sweden is a great light in the non-sectarian Masonic Brotherhood, Masonic Brotherhood, Masonic Brotherhood. And King Haakon of Norway is a Masonic light in Norway. The late King Christian of Denmark was a Masonic spirit in his Denmark. Also, King George of England is a Masonic light to his Anglo-Saxon people. Just as Providence has chosen the Jewish race, the children of Israel, to bring into the world righteousness by carrying the 10 Commandments, which emphasize, quote, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, end quote, so also Providence has chosen the Nordic race to unfold the, quote, new age, end quote, of the world, a, quote, novus ordo seclorum, end quote. One of the first of the Nordics to reach the New World was the Viking Leif Erikson. He sailed from Norway to bring to his people in Iceland a new message, the message of the Christian God. But Providence moves in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform, and so Leif the Lucky was sent by Providence to the New World. From the abundance of grapes found there, Leif Erikson called the place Vinland. It is easy to sense that Leif Erikson was sent by the guiding hand of Providence to bring the Norse spirit to the, quote, All-Father, end quote, to the shores of the New World. The Nordics are the highest branch of the 5th Aryan civilization. The Latins are of the 4th Aryan civilization, and the American race will be the 6th Aryan civilization. Notice all this Aryan bullshit? This new and great civilization is like an American beauty rosebud, like an American beauty rosebud, ready to open and send its wonderful fragrance to all the world. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Paine, and many others of the founders of the new nation in the New World were Nordics. Thomas Paine, the spark plug of the American Revolution, loved God, but hated sectarianism. In these are the times, he wrote, we have it in our power to begin the world all over again. A situation similar to the present hath not happened since the days of Noah. Till now, the birthday of a new world is at hand. As stated before, God's plan in America is a non-sectarian plan. Our Constitution is non-sectarian. Our great American public schools, God's chosen schools, are non-sectarian. And I have to submit here, ladies and gentlemen, that is a lie. They're not God's chosen schools. They were promoted and brought about by Freemasonry. I continue. The great spirit behind this great nation is non-sectarian, and that is true, for the God of the Lodge of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is Lucifer, and I can prove that. I continue. Our great American public schools have never taken away from any child the freedom of will, freedom of spirit, or freedom of mind. That is the divine reason that great God, our King, has chosen the great American public schools to pave the way for the new race, the new religion, and the new civilization that is taking place in America. Any mother, father, or guardian who is responsible for the taking away of freedom of mind, freedom of will, or freedom of spirit is the lowest criminal on this earth, because they take away from that child the God-given right to become a part of God's great plan in America for the dawn of the new age of the world. Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and God bless you all.